What are the methods of purchasing a vehicle, and how do they compare with one another?
Without getting into the numbers, Nelson demonstrates that there are 5 legitimate ways to have the use of an automobile.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The first is leasing. And you know as well as I do, the leasing company doesn't have any money. They repackage money that they have gotten from banks and insurance companies.
Mm.
Right? And so, yeah, it comes with a low payment, right? But you don't build any equity.
Right.
And, for God's sake, really don't go over the miles, right? It's a perpetual payment.
Yeah.
With no equity ever. Mm-hmm. And then he gets into banking, the bank, using the bank's money, just borrowing the money from the bank. But do I need to say that the banks don't have any money either? They just create money out of thin air. But it's better than leasing.
Yeah.
And I think Nelson pretty much expects you to understand that without, proving the numbers. If the leasing company is profitable,
it must be the case that cutting out the middleman, cutting out the leasing company, then would pass on greater financial performance to the individual.
Yeah. If you cut out the middleman, you get what he was getting.
Right. So these people are getting paid, the finance people are getting paid, the sales people are getting paid, all of the business expense to operate the machinery behind the leasing company, it all has an expense to it. So if you cut them out, then the logic would dictate that the bank is a more affordable method.
When's the last time you looked at a leasing document? Do you remember?
I don't lease, so I wouldn't know.
All right, but they don't put an interest rate on there anywhere. Yeah. They expect you to be able to calculate the interest rate if that's what you want to know. Mm-hmm. It's a factor. Mm-hmm. Now why would they? I don't want to say why would they do that. I mean, that's a method that they use, but intuitively, if the leasing company is making a profit, then you can cut the middle guy out, the middleman out, and keep the profit.
Yeah, even if it's not listed, that interest charge, that finance charge is there. You're paying it one way or the other.
One way or the other. And then he talks about cash, discipline.
Absolutely, pay cash for everything. You don't want any debt. And as Nelson shows, the cash method looks better than the bank and the lease method. Works out better for the individual.
But he's got to have discipline to save up money to make a cash purchase. So he is foregoing that gratification of instant purchase, So when he saves up the money, then, to make that cash purchase, he's spending his savings. That savings isn't going to earn any interest for him ever, or for them ever. So as soon as you pay cash for that automobile, you're not ever going to earn anything on that money. Right. Then he gets into the CD, the sisters. There's CD sister, she's foregoing the consumption, applying the discipline. And he keeps the comparisons between the CD sister and the IBC method equal, right?
Mm. Showing the same cash flows.
Same cash flows. Yep. And the CD, the savings and earning an interest rate on a CD looks better. They both, one sister pays premium. The other sister puts money into a CD. Both sisters purchase a car in the 7th year. Mm-hmm. Right. And the CD compared to the IBC method is ahead of the game. She's ahead of the game for the first 14 years. And so early on, it appears obvious that that's the way to go. Mm-hmm. Save it up in a CD, earn some interest, and then make the purchase.
So like in comparison to the cash method, at least the CD person is allocating some of that money to something that will build interest over time. Whereas the person who just saves cash is, like you said, getting rid of that. They're not going to have any interest ever again on that money. And so in effect, that CD person is using someone else's bank in order to build up an asset that will provide some interest payment for the rest of that individual's lifetime, as Nelson shows. Whereas the IBC person is effectively using their own bank, getting paid both the interest that would typically go to the banker and also receiving the dividends, which are the profits of the banking entity.
Would go to the bank owner normally.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know your bank pays dividends?
Yep. Just not to me.
Because you don't own the bank, right? Talk about cutting the middleman. You're just one more middleman you're cutting out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think, too, it's important to get into why it is that the CD method looks better in up to the 14th year, is because that the bank that exists that is holding the CD has already done all of the capitalization. They've done the work to build out the entity and the processes needed to hold that money and to provide the interest flow. And so if you're going to do the IBC method, capitalize into a banking entity that you own and control, you have to pay the price by capitalizing for that initial time period.
So there is a startup cost,
mm-hmm.
And that,
yep. And that gets into what happens, after that, because Nelson looks at, the retirement piece of this. One of it, as you've said before, one of his main things is thinking long range. And when you look out as far as you can go into the retirement time, then the comparison is in favor of the IBC method.
Well, yeah, with retirement income,
mm-hmm.
right? No question. The CD sister runs out of retirement income in about 5.5 years, where the IBC sister never runs out of income, and Nelson doesn't kill her until she's 95, right? But in the beginning, too, it may not look as good in the first 7 years or the first 14 years, the IBC method. But you think about the CD sister, the bank controlled that loan. The bank told her when she was going to make a loan repayment, how much she was going to pay, at what interest rate, whatever the market rate of interest was. And so, and just like you said, the bank had to capitalize that entity that's going to perform the banking function, right? So there's a capitalization period when you practice becoming your own banker, the infinite banking concept. There is a startup cost. You've got to build the entity that can perform the banking function in your life. And Nelson's just using an automobile in equal cash flows comparisons with twin sisters, right? So there is a startup cost. But control, what you don't see necessarily, and what I'm addressing is the control. The IBC sister is controlling the banking function throughout her life. And then there's a dramatic difference when you get into the retirement income, no question, because the further out you go, the better all the numbers look, right?
And then at the end of it, still provides money to the next generation, to
what
beneficiaries.
What you mean? She's going to grow up, get married, and have children, right? And want them to do well too,
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no, you name the last time you got a loan that had a death benefit on it. It's like,
yeah. What other asset comes with the death benefit? I don't know either.
All right. Why would an individual expand their banking system to accommodate all of their income?
Nelson says that premiums and income should match. And that's pretty hard to comprehend in the beginning, but as you go forward, it becomes clearer, I think. But look, all of your money resides right now in someone else's bank.
Yep.
Right. All of your money, all of your cash flows go through someone else's bank. I mean, think about that. That's powerful. I think Nelson just added scale to, he added scale to life insurance by isolating the fact that your need for finance is greater than your need for death benefit. Life insurance has all the characteristics required for a banking entity. And then he just added scale to it. one policy can't meet all of your financing needs. It's very difficult. So,
and he, just talked about the purchase of a car. Well, you're going to purchase other things too. You're going to buy a house. Maybe you want to start a business. Maybe you have medical expenses. Maybe you want to remodel or take a trip. You will encounter things in life that you're going to finance, and you'll either use capital you own and control to do it or somebody else's.
You finance every purchase you make. You either pay cash or give up interest. We've already covered that.
Mm-hmm.
So every major purchase, you think about how long have you been driving? You don't have to tell me, but you've been driving a long time.
Yeah.
How many cars have you driven?
Actually, only one for me, but.
You're very frugal. Good job.
10 years.
Well, you're young. You're going to be driving a lot longer.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
So one more car is not going to get it done.
Nope.
Right. Just think how many cars you finance over a lifetime, or the average all-American family, how many cars they finance over a lifetime.
Yeah. I know people who switch them out every 4 years, whether they need one or not.
Right.
Yeah.
God bless them.
And they're going to finance it, right? They're going to have those 5 options. And at every time you come to purchase something that's beyond your monthly or regular cash flow, you either going to use capital you own and control, or you're going to use somebody else's.
Right.
And even if you do use your own capital, you still should pay the money back. You should be an honest banker and not steal the peas. Just because you are the banker, just because you can control the banking function, doesn't give you the right to abuse it. I mean, technically you can, but it's not, certainly not in your interest to. And you have more purchases in the future you're going to finance anyway. Yeah. So there's nothing free. A lot of people want something for nothing, and that's why IBC isn't a scheme or a get-rich-quick thing. It's just a method to control the banking function as it relates to your needs.
Well, what stands out in part 3 to you?
For me, this chapter's, and it took a while when I first read the book, equipment financing really stuck out. The next part we'll get to. But as I've spent time in the industry and with clients, it's part 3 sticks out above the others because it's the place where where Nelson demonstrates that the individual will be financially better off over the relevant time period, over the long term, if they take control of the capital building function in their life. And it's proven. It's proven logically. It's proven numerically. You could sit down all day and build Excel sheets, which I've tried to do, and it's a pain. But Nelson does the job, and you can follow it from start to finish. And it's very clear that if you have the discipline and you have the forward-looking vision, you see out far enough into your adult stages, the later stages of life, retirement, it's in your best interest, in your financial best interest, to own and operate the banking function. And this part 3 is proof of that for me.
Yep, I agree. Over the long period, but even over the short period, in any time period, you want to segment that time period up. I think, he goes 95 years, mm-hmm. right? He shows a IBC sister 95 years of age. So you can segment her life up. I mean, he's just demonstrating building a banking system and financing one automobile. She's going to finance, we're going to finance, you're going to finance everything you purchase over a lifetime.
Yeah.
And the numbers just get bigger and bigger. One policy can't do it. So you have to have multiple policies depending on how much of the banking function you want to control. That's what stands out to me, is the control of the banking function. If you abdicate your responsibility to perform the banking function, that's all you've done, is abdicated that responsibility. Someone is going to perform the banking function because banking is, and they're going to receive the profits from banking. And we should retain that responsibility or learn how to maintain or even get back control of the banking function in our life. It is possible. Mm-hmm. That's what stands out to me, that, it can be done. You have to think long range, mm-hmm. And you have to be disciplined, but there's no magic in the numbers. You said it earlier. It's not a scheme. It's not a sales method. It is a legitimate process and strategy to control the banking function. And if you do that, the profits accrue to you.
Yeah.
So,
And what you could do as well is like so Nelson's talking about a car, purchase of a car in this part. Swap that out for a property. Swap that out for anything you're going to finance or purchase, whether you're an investor, an individual, an employee, whoever you are, whatever it is you're financing. Right. Just like you said, so right, banking is. The financing function is being performed. And for most people, it's not under their control. And the costs are demonstrated numerically in part.